Hello. It's your girl again, back here at Nouveau. And today we are going to be doing something different. Today I'm not going to try to sell you anything, but instead I'm going to be informing you, telling you, and learning you a thing or two that's new. So this week we are focusing on one of my favorite topics, and that is unlocking the Geekiverse, which is anime, DC, Marvel, gaming, all things geeky, and other stuff. For now, I want to tell you a little story. So a couple of weeks ago, I was sitting on my bed, of course, and I was scrolling through Facebook. And as I was scrolling through Facebook, I came across this advert for an event that was happening over the weekend of the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, 25th of September, and that is Comic-Con. So Comic-Con is a well-known festival for this particular pop culture and gaming in Africa, and this was the first Comic-Con that I went to since like 2017. So I was actually really excited about this. And the funny thing is, I only bought myself one ticket. I don't know why, I don't know for what, but I thought that buying one singular ticket to this event would be a good idea. But after I bought my ticket, I then realized how many other people were actually interested in an event like this and in a niche like this. So in my scrolling, as per usual, I came across a competition that was being held by Palladium South Africa. Surprisingly, I won. I actually won something for the first time in my life. I could not believe it. So thanks to Palladium, I was lucky enough to take two other people with me to the Comic-Con festival. And not only did I win tickets, but I won 4-day passes. So I could have gone the Thursday. No. I could have gone the Friday. I could have gone the Saturday. I could have gone the Sunday. And I could have gone the Monday. But unfortunately, I was only able to get to Comic-Con on the Saturday. So that sucked. But honestly, the Saturday was the best day because that's when everyone was there. So there was a lot more cosplayers, and some of their outfits were amazing. They had such amazing outfits. They really dressed up. They made such an amazing effort. So they all looked absolutely stunning. But right now what we're looking at a couple of other pictures that I took while I was there at Comic-Con. So something I really enjoyed about this event was how they set it up, because instead of just having like one big hall where there was like all these tables and masses of people, what they did was they separated it. So there were about 6 halls, and with those 6 halls, each hall was dedicated to a specific niche. So, some halls were about gaming, some halls were more for figurines, some halls were more for writing, illustrations, and there were so many other things. I was really impressed with the way that they had laid it out. So, as you can see here, I took some pictures from the comic book section. This was from the figurine. This is a massive Goku figurine, and they had so many other figurines, but we'll speak about that in a second. Of course, I had to take a picture of the place who made it possible to be there, so Palladium. And this is a Samsung section. This was just outdoors. So this was just, a couple of other pictures that I just took while I was walking around. So really, for someone who just decided to buy a random ticket one, Tuesday morning, I honestly didn't know what to expect going to this event, but I can honestly say that I was not disappointed, at all. It was really well organized. It was well done. And even when we were trying to get into the place, you usually expect there to be queues and queues, especially for events and festivals. But I think maybe we went at a good time, firstly, but also secondly, it was just so well organized in the sense that you weren't standing and queuing in that heat and in the middle of wherever it was that we were. It was smooth, it was processed, it was well organized, it was well controlled. So it was actually really, the execution of this event was really well done. So good job, guys. So as I mentioned to you before, the Geekiverse is a new word that I wanted us to come back and talk about because, okay, I don't want to say it's a new word. Perhaps this is a word that already exists. And when I was doing research on it, I did see that a lot of people actually use this for like, SoundCloud pages, they use it for Facebook pages, etc. And I think obviously the intention behind it is the same. But I did come up with a definition for this, the Geekiverse. So the Geekiverse is an amalgamation of geek culture, meaning that it encompasses the diverse array of passions, interests, and communities that make up this vibrant subculture. I think that definition really sums up the Geekiverse because firstly, the word geek, if we were to actually define the word geek, a geek is someone who is obsessively interested in something. So for example, I know someone who absolutely loves Lego, and she has so many Legos. She's actually in her house dedicated an entire room to all of the Lego builds that she's made in her lifetime because she loves them so much. And so if you think about it, we could consider her as a geek because she is obsessively interested in Lego. She has everything. I think she even has like a Lego lunchbox. If we were to break this down, the Geekiverse in itself is a niche, right? It's a niche because it is specifically about anime. It is specifically about, Marvel and DC, gaming. And those are niches within a niche. So if you think about it, the Geekiverse is already a niche. And if we were to break that Geekiverse down, we could break it into sub-niches, which becomes Marvel and DC, anime, gaming, etc. And if you are someone who is interested in joining or being a part of this niche, the Geekiverse, then you can find your own niche. And that could be clothing and apparel. It could be figurines. It could be fan art. It could be fan fiction. It could be Lego. It could be comic books, toys, etc. Okay? But it's just you choosing a niche within a niche within a niche. So if your mind is blown, I've done my job. So when I was at Comic-Con, obviously Comic-Con in itself was a representation of the Geekiverse because it was the coming together of all these geeky things. So while I was there, I saw t-shirts, I saw mugs, I saw posters, I saw figurines, I saw clothing, I saw caps, I saw bags, I saw old used comic books, and in actual fact, bought new comic books. And while I was there were three niches that particularly stood out to me. And the reason why they stood out to me is because firstly, they are tried, proven, and tested in the sense that, people always assume that when you are trying to find your niche, you should think of something that's completely out of the box and completely different and whatever. But the reality is so many different niches have already been, found and exploited, and currently, some might even be oversaturated. Sometimes it is a good idea to take these already, successful niches, take it and adapt it for your own. So make it your own, make it according to you, make it according to your ideas, make it according to your thoughts, etc. Three niches that I chose that I want us to discuss today, they're pretty generalized niches. However, I do think they are niches that are realistic in the sense that it is achievable for you to be successful in them. So if we look here, niche one that I want to speak about is Geekiverse apparel. So things like shirts, hats, scarves, bags, socks, any type of clothing that either emulates, represents, or displays Geekiverse paraphernalia. The second niche that I want to speak about is 3D printed figurines. And basically, 3D printed models or figures of the Geekiverse characters, other related objects. So the last niche that I would like to talk about is writing and illustration. I know, so cliche, but I think it's just the writer in me that was like, this is brilliant, because I was really taken back by some of the things that I found in the writing and illustration hall at Comic-Con. So yeah. So the first niche that we are going to be speaking about is Geekiverse apparel. And what I mean by apparel is basically clothing that has some kind of Geekiverse related picture, quote, whatever, printed on it, embroidered on it, sewn on, etc. I'm giving you some examples of a local South African company that I once worked with that specialized in taking t-shirts and printing different designs on them. And they also had socks, they had mugs, they had hats. Not bags. But this is some of their designs. So as you can see, they've got Rick and Morty, of course. They've got Sabotage. So there was that game with like these things that was sabotaging each other. I don't know. Fortnite, and there's an imposter among us. So basically what people would do is you could either buy a shirt that was already designed, and then buy it in your size, and then they'll send it to you. Or if you want to, if you're an artist, then you could have created your own design and then send it to them, and then they would print that design on a t-shirt or socks or hat or whatever. So t-shirt design, clothing, all of those type of things, it is something that is quite familiar in this niche, in the Geekiverse niche. So I understand that clothing is a saturated market, and a lot of people, when you do mention this to them, they always kind of think, well, what am I really selling that's going to be different from what someone else is selling, right? But something with this niche is that it is proven, tried and tested, in the sense that if your designs are unique, they are unusual, they make a statement, they really stand out, they're really different, but they also look good. I have to emphasize that they look good. Chances are you definitely will be having customers purchasing some of your clothes from you. That's all fair and well. All the information I just mentioned, that's all fair and well. But there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to this niche. The first thing is, how do you actually design your clothes? Okay, because if you're someone like me who doesn't actually know, or not know, but you're not familiar with the uses of different apps or different digital things that will help you to design your clothes, then obviously that is already a big problem. You need to be able to create a design and show your design to a manufacturer or whoever it is that's going to be making your clothes for you. Okay? So from my research and from what I know, there are two main applications that you can use to help you design our clothes. The first is Canva. So of course Canva, I love Canva. Canva is so convenient. And if you have a subscription, my God, you can create anything. Okay, so Canva definitely. And then the other one is Adobe Illustrator. So Illustrator, from what I've read, is very popular with a lot of different designers. And every time I do see videos of these content designers or clothing designers or whatever, they always have the Illustrator logo open on their computer. So Illustrator is really good. The problem with Illustrator is you really need to know that application in order to use it. Illustrator, you need to watch some kind of tutorial, because there's so many tricks and tips and things that you didn't actually know was possible until you learn the shortcut key, or how to move your mouse, or how to press a certain button or whatever. So that's just my personal opinion with Illustrator. But yeah, so these are the two applications that I would recommend in terms of how to design your clothing. Okay, and actually I created a design that I wanted to show you. So I created this design using Canva. And the way I did this, because obviously, my hands are so unstable, they're just always shaky. So there was no way that I was going to be able to draw the shirt from scratch. No. So what I did was I went online and I found a t-shirt template. So as you can see, and then what I did was I downloaded that template, I loaded it onto Canva, and then afterwards I started to include my colors, I started to include my pictures, I started to include, the logo, etc. And so as you can see, this is the front of the shirt, this is the back of the shirt. So I would recommend always including front and back, because if you are sending this to a manufacturer, in terms of placement, where you want something on your design, it helps. So here we go, we got front and back. As you can see, I took this template, I stuck it on Canva, right? And then afterwards, Canva, of course, has all those different elements. So I thought about the theme. I was like, what am I actually trying to make? What is the theme of the shirt? What is the point of the shirt? So this was for a clothing line that I was trying to create called the Cosmic Adventurer. And that was basically everything sci-fi, cosmos related, universal related, etc. So in the front here, I used a little Canva, those pre-made Canva pictures of a little spaceman. I just changed the color up a little bit, and then I just added some lines in here. So these little things here. The nice thing about Canva is that they already have these things made. The only thing is you obviously have to edit it. And then of course I just included the name of the company that I was making this for. So The Simple Man. And then of course at the back here, I've got the actual name of the line of this, shirt. So Cosmic Adventurer. And then of course I just added in another picture, and then I just changed the colors, So it was that simple. It was that easy. And like I say with Canva, you can just take an image, stick it on, upload it, and then you can edit it like this. And I think you can definitely do the same for Illustrator. But I personally just feel that Canva is much easier to use than Illustrator. Illustrator has a lot of tools. You need to know how to use those tools if you really want to create a design like this, Once you've decided that the niche that you want to exploit within the Geekiverse niche is apparel, clothing and apparel, and once you have figured out how you're going to actually design your clothes, right, there are a couple of things that you need to consider before you go forward and before you take it a step forward. So firstly, your designs, your clothing always needs to be innovative. They need to be unique, and they need to be statement piece design. So they need to be unusual. They need to be different. The other thing is finding a manufacturer. So again, I reached out to a couple of manufacturers to find out what is the next step, like what actually happens, right? So one of the manufacturers actually got back to me, also a local manufacturer here in SA. So firstly, the manufacturer would need my design. Afterwards, after they've received the design, they would then need to make a sample, and I would obviously have to pay for that sample. And once I've paid for that sample, they'll obviously deliver it to me, and with that I can see what my design looks like on an actual piece of clothing, right? The problem with manufacturers though is that they need minimum order, and you have to pay that minimum order upfront. So with this company, the minimum order was 30 shirts. So for one design that I make, I would have to purchase 30 shirts from them, different of the same color. So 30 white shirts with that design, 30 red shirts with that design, 30 blue shirts with that design, etc. And the shirts would be according to the price per one shirt. So if one shirt costs like 100 Rand, then for 30 shirts, it's going to cost like, what is 30 times 100? 3,000? 3,000 maybe? I'm also really terrible at math, so I need to obviously get out my calculator for this very simple. Yeah, 3,000. Oh my god, I was right. Okay. I can maths. Yay. So your minimum order with your manufacturer could cost a lot for one design. So if you start a website and you have all these different designs, you now need to think, okay, so does that mean I'm going to pay 3,000 Rand to have 30 shirts in case I get 30 orders so that, I can make sure my customers are happy? Then your startup capital is going to be insane just for that. The other thing to think about is the type of clothes that you're going to be putting your designs on. So yes, of course, I've mentioned t-shirts, but at some point you do want to expand. So you do want to, include caps, you want to include socks, pants, bags, etc., because you don't want to just limit yourself to one thing. And that's the other thing I like about this niche, is that there is opportunity for you to diversify your product. So you're not just stuck with t-shirts. I think that's also something else to think about. Niche number 2, 3D printed figurines. Yay! So I actually really am interested in 3D printing. I think it's really, really fascinating to take this 2D image, reformat it into a 3D image, and then all of a sudden you are just actually holding that 3D image in your hand. And you know, when 3D printing came out, at first I thought it was so unusual, but eventually, you know, some of the things that 3D printing has been useful. I mean, I read a couple of articles where 3D printing was actually used for prosthetics for people who, are amputees. So there's a lot of positives behind 3D printing. When I was at Comic-Con, there was actually a couple of businesses that was using 3D printing to create their products. So if we look at this image here on my screen, all of these figures were 3D printed. Everything here was 3D printed. And I think that's really fascinating, that these guys, they decided to 3D print these different things, and then of course, you know, come to Comic-Con, get a stall and start to sell them. And besides this, one of the other companies that I saw there, the small businesses that I saw there, this one was also quite interesting. So something that's really become quite popular is Funko Pops. And so this small business, what they decided to do was make 3D printed wall mounts that were the perfect size for these Funko Pop boxes to fit on. And I thought that was brilliant. Now that is a niche that is worth exploring. This guy, so I was actually eavesdropping on this guy when he was explaining the story about how this business came along. So his wife is apparently a real Funko Pop fan. Like, she has so many boxes of these Funko Pops, and she needed to obviously display these Funko Pops. Like, she's just sitting with these boxes, so she wanted to display this. And that's when this guy got this idea to create these 3D printed wall mounts to put his wife's Funko Pops boxes, you know, on display. I thought that was brilliant. I actually thought that was so brilliant. So without realizing it, without recognizing it, he found a niche. He found a need for something. He exploited that. He created something, and now he's at Comic-Con selling these wall mounts for, I don't know, I think it was like 50 Rand or 30 Rand wall mounts. And they were in different colors. They were painted. They look really nice. I don't know if it came with like a screw, you know, like a screw to actually screw it on a wall. So I didn't really get that information. But I just thought the concept and the story behind it was brilliant. So yeah, for 3D printing, there's a lot of things to consider. If you are someone like me who lives in a country where electricity can sometimes be a problem, so I'm sure you've heard of load shedding in South Africa, the first thing you need to think about is, how are you going to print during load shedding time? Because that printing time is going to be valuable, especially if you have a lot of orders, right? So that's the first thing to think about. The second thing to think about is, how are you going to include color in your prints? So in this picture, we are seeing color, right? But the thing is, a 3D printer, from what I've read, you cannot print according to the color of the picture. So if I have a picture of, like, for example, this character, right? So if I have a picture of this character on this comic book, and I want to print it as a 3D printer, the 3D printer is not going to pick up these individual colors and print it in these individual colors. It's going to print it in one color. And then depending on that, I will have to figure out how to get it in color. So that's where the problem lies. When you are making a 3D print, are you going to limit your colors to only the colors that you have? Are you going to paint it yourself and then send it to the customer? But the problem with that is, if you paint it yourself, it's going to take you extra time in terms of production. Or are you going to get a paint kit and send it along with your 3D print? The other thing to consider in terms of your printing is, depending on the size of the figure, are you going to print the figure piece by piece and then build it? Or will you create instructions and send it with the figure to be built by the customer? Actually, That same friend that I told you about that has a lot of different, clothing and apparel that she prints, these Geekiverse related things on. Something she was telling me were 3D figures, because she's also got a couple of figurines in her store. Sometimes her suppliers will 3D print something for her and send it to her in pieces. So they'll send a head, they'll send a torso, they'll send an arm, they'll send a leg separately. And then she has to build it and put it together so that she can display it in her store. And then if she does sell it, then she has to take it down and break it piece by piece, put it in a box, and then send it to a customer, and the customer has to build it, right? So that's the second thing that you need to think about. And the last thing that you need to think about, right? Again, depending on the size of what you are 3D printing, sometimes that might not be enough to draw in customers, right? So if you 3D print a little Batman, how do you know that little Batman is going to be interesting enough to draw in customers? So you need to get creative. You need to think about, how can you convince people that shopping with you is the right thing to do, right? So in that case, something I saw on TikTok a while ago, this girl was making keyrings, little keyrings, like just small little things, right? And they were super cute. Like, there was nothing wrong with these keyrings. They were also anime related keyrings, in the sense that, it was like a Goku, or it was like a what's that guy from Demon Slayer, one of those characters, like a One Punch Man, whatever. And the keyring itself was just a normal general keyring. It was really cute. It had color and whatever. But what really drawed me into this TikTok video was the unboxing experience. The actual unboxing of this keyring was so majestic. It was so attractive. It looked so good, and it looked like an experience that I actually wanted to have. Like, I was actually really tempted to buy this from her, So that could also be something to consider, in the sense that, okay, maybe you might not be printing the biggest of things, or you might not be printing the most interesting of things, but the actual experience of purchasing this figure from you could be the thing that someone is buying. So I think that's also something to think about. And I do think that sometimes the unboxing and the way you present your actual product or item or whatever it is, really makes the impact and really makes a difference in terms of whether or not someone is going to be purchasing with you. So yeah, a lot of things to consider with this one. And the last niche number 3, writing and illustration. So writing and illustration, I think I was really attracted to this niche from Comic-Con specifically, is because I will always be a writer at heart. I think it was just one of those things where I was like, oh my god, like other like-minded individuals who are also creatives and also trying to just like communicate to the world a thought or idea using their words. Like, yes, definitely. The foundation of the Geekiverse is literally made from writing and illustrations, comic books, mangas, manhwa. While I was at Comic-Con, one of the halls were specifically dedicated to writers and artists. So these writers and these artists, they came and they displayed their fan art, they came and they displayed their fan fiction, they came and displayed new art. So things that aren't actually related to already established characters within the Geekiverse. And with that being said, one of the tables that I stopped by and spoke to the people was this guy whose comic stall was called Rainbow Nation Comics. And basically he was telling me that his story, his comic, which is this one, Young Nelson, pretty cool. It is pretty much about a young Nelson Mandela who is also low-key a vigilante superhero. And I thought the concept behind the actual story was brilliant. I was like, you know what, honestly, like that is just such a twist to Nelson Mandela, like really, and a young Nelson as well. So I really enjoyed the concept of the story. But this guy was telling me that he's the writer. So he's the one who's actually written the story. He's the one who's actually come up with the whole idea and concept. And he has collaborated with his younger brother, who is an artist. So he's writing the actual story, but his younger brother is in charge of the illustrations. And I just thought to myself, that is brilliant. So check them out, Rainbow Nation Comics. And he was so nice. Like, he was actually so cool. And the comic that he sold me, it's a newspaper comic, and I absolutely love newspaper comics because, well, not newspaper comics, but it's like that paper, like a newspaper, right? And I really like this because it just reminded me of when I was a child, and I used to read like comics in, like, you know, what was the name of that newspaper? The Sunday Times, The Star, where it was like that old harsh newspaper paper, and at the back of it. But yeah, I guess, you know, just the fact that I was at Comic-Con, which is literally a convention to display Geekiverse related things, and this was one of the things that I found in the writing and illustrations. This goes to show that events like Comic-Con are needed, because people who do these things, they now have a platform and they have the exposure that they need for their art. So yeah, with this niche, writing and illustration, there are of course things to consider, and the biggest thing is, how are you going to get your writing and artwork out there? So like I just mentioned, Comic-Con functions as a platform for, you know, new artists, new writers to get their work out there, because if I didn't go to Comic-Con, I was not going to know that this existed. Let's be honest. So that's definitely something to think about. Obviously, use your social media platforms, so Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, whatever. But I would definitely recommend creating a website. Yeah, you have to create a website, like it's 2023. I would also recommend going on writing related platforms, so like, for example, Wattpad. So look for things like that. Look for ways to get your actual writing out there. The other thing is, how are you going to attract readers and art lovers to view your content? So you need to find catchphrases. Where if someone reads that catchphrase, they're going to be like, oh wow, what is this? Let me read some more. Okay. With this type of niche, you need to think about, how are you actually going to get your artwork out there? And, you know, I think with illustrations, you could use illustrations from niche 3 and pair it with clothing and apparel from niche 1, because whatever artwork you do, if you want to get it out there and, you know, have it be a statement piece, you could take it, make a design and stick it on some clothes. So I think that's also nice in the sense that these niches, they can overlap. They can actually help each other and help you to really exploit and unlock your niche within the niche, the Geekiverse. As I mentioned to you before, the Geekiverse really is a niche that has so many different opportunities within it. And if you are looking to enter into that niche, the Geekiverse niche, and find your own niche, then I think that there's so many different possibilities. So you really have to narrow it down. You really need to decide and find the correct niche for you. The thing though, especially when you are trying to find your niche, and especially when you are trying to do the things that we are trying to do here, you need to remember that execution is key. So how you're planning to actually make this work is what's important. How are you going to take it from the next step to the next step to the next step to the next step? And, you know, the only advice that I can give with regards to that is to remember your niche, to remember how you are going to get your niche out there. So how are you going to actually let people know that this exists? And also, you need to be persistent. You need to be consistent, persistent, and determined. So those 3 things are really important. Something else that I also would like you to keep in mind, especially when you are trying to find your niche, and especially when you are trying to figure out within that niche, what are you going to do? So remember, like I said, the Geekiverse is a niche. Within that niche, we have the anime, DC, Marvel, gaming niches. and you are now trying to find your niche within that niche that belongs to the Geekiverse niche. So here are some questions. That I think are worth asking yourself when you're trying to break down your niche. So the first question is, what is your niche within the Geekiverse? So are you going to be doing clothing? Are you going to be doing 3D printed figurines? Are you going to be doing, illustrations, posters? What are you actually going to be doing? The second question you need to ask yourself, how will you monetize your niche? So how are you actually going to make money from this niche? Business is business, so get it together. So the third question is, how will you convince your target market that your offerings are for them? So the target market, or the people you are trying to reach, whether it's t-shirts, 3D printing, toys, whatever, how are you going to convince them that they should buy your product? So what type of advertising are you going to do? And the last question that I think is worth asking, how will your target market access and engage with your products or content? Website, Shopify, are they going to purchase it through Instagram? So I think that the Geekiverse is definitely a niche worth exploring, because there's just so many opportunities. And when you are exploring them, I hope that you'll keep these 4 questions in mind, because I think it will really be helpful, especially in your planning process of your niche endeavor that you're going to take. So what started off with me just buying a random ticket on a Tuesday morning to Comic-Con kind of erupted and developed into me noticing and recognizing these niches and trying to share and inform these niches to you. And I think that if you are going to explore any of this, or if you are going to look into any of this, or want to look into any of this, then comment down below, what do you think? What other questions do you think someone should ask themselves before exploring this niche? And yeah,